Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to what can only be described as a day that will be etched into the very clay of Roland Garros for eternity. We have just witnessed a seismic event, a tectonic shift in the landscape of women's tennis that has left all of France, and indeed the entire sporting world, absolutely speechless. If you are just joining us, you are tuning into the aftermath of a sporting miracle, an absolute masterclass of resilience, power, and sheer, unadulterated willpower. The news that is flashing across every sports network, trending worldwide across every social media platform, and echoing to the hallowed grounds of the French Open is this. Alexandra Eala, the rising star from the Philippines, has not just defeated, but completely dismantled and exploded past the 36-time champion and global tennis icon, Katerina Siniakova of the Czech Republic. This is not hyperbole. This is the reality of what just unfolded in Paris. To say that all of France is shocked would be a profound understatement. The collective gasp from the Parisian crowd, a crowd known for its deep, historical understanding of the game, its discerning eye for talent, and its unforgiving expectations of greatness, was audible. It was a gasp that transcended language, a universal expression of pure, unadulterated disbelief. We are talking about Katerina Siniakova. We are talking about a player whose name is synonymous with victory, a tactical genius of the court, a multiple Grand Slam champion who has navigated the highest pressure situations the sport has to offer time and time again. She is a stalwart of the Czech tennis dynasty, a player who has hoisted trophies on every continent, under every condition, against the very best the world has ever seen. She brought the weight of 36 championship titles onto that court today. She brought experience, an intimidating aura, and a game style that has suffocated the greatest players of this generation. And yet, she was systematically broken down by the relentless, fiery brilliance of Alexandra Eala. Let us pause for a moment to truly digest the magnitude of this upset. Upsets happen in tennis. It is the nature of a sport where two gladiators step onto a court with no clock to save them, only their rackets and their minds. We have seen lucky net cords. We have seen bad days at the office. We have seen injuries change the course of a match. But this was none of those things. This was not a fluke. This was a statement. Alexandra Eala did not just scrape by. She dominated. She exploded onto the court with a velocity and ferocity that caught everyone, especially Siniakova, completely off guard. From the very first ball struck, Eala dictated the terms of engagement. She brought a level of intensity that seemed to rattle the very foundations of the stadium. For a young player from the Philippines, a country with a passionate, growing love for tennis, but without the deep, historical infrastructure of a European powerhouse, to walk onto one of the biggest stages in the world and systematically dismantle a living legend is a narrative that Hollywood writers would deem too unrealistic. The shockwaves are currently radiating out from Paris. You can feel the energy shift in the locker rooms, in the press centers, and among the millions watching from their screens in Manila, Prague, New York, and beyond. This is the kind of match that redefines a career. For Eala, it is the ultimate arrival. It is the moment she transitions from a promising prospect, a former junior Grand Slam champion, to a legitimate, terrifying contender on the main tour. For Siniakova, it is a staggering defeat that will force a deep reevaluation, a stark reminder that the new generation is not just knocking on the door. They are kicking it down. We're going to spend the rest of this broadcast dissecting exactly how this happened. We will break down the tactics, the psychology, the historical context, and what this means for the future of the WTA Tour. But before we dive into the granular details of forehands, backhands, and break points, we must sit with the sheer emotional weight of this moment. France loves a champion, but more than anything, France loves a fighter. And today, they fell in love with Alexandra Eala. The Parisian crowd, notoriously difficult to win over, found themselves captivated by her fearless striking, her incredible court coverage, and the sheer audacity of her shot-making against a player of Siniakova's pedigree. Every time Siniakova tried to deploy her legendary variety, her spins, her drop shots, her angles, the very tools that have won her 36 titles, Eala had an answer, and the answer was usually a blistering, physics-defying winner that left the red clay smoking. The atmosphere was electric, transitioning from polite expectation of Siniakova victory to a stunned silence, and finally to a roaring, standing ovation for the young Filipina, who refused to blink. This match was a collision of eras. The established, decorated veteran versus the hungry, fearless challenger. It is a story as old as sport itself, but rarely is it executed with such dramatic flair and conclusive finality. The word exploded in our headline is not chosen lightly. Eala's game was explosive. Her movement was explosive. Her mental resilience was explosive. She blew past the defenses of one of the best defenders in the game. To understand the gravity of this, you have to understand who Katerina Siniakova is. She is a master of the chess match that is clay court tennis. She knows how to build a point, how to exploit a weakness, how to use the geometry of the court to her absolute advantage. She is a player who thrives on making her opponents uncomfortable, forcing errors through relentless consistency and tactical brilliance. Yet, today, it was Siniakova who looked entirely uncomfortable. It was Siniakova who was rushed, pressured, and ultimately overwhelmed by the sheer pace and depth of Eala's ground strokes. As we prepare to delve deeper into the anatomy of this historic upset, I want you to keep in mind the sheer improbability of what we have just witnessed. The odds were stacked heavily against the young Filipina. The experience gap, the title gap, the ranking gap, all pointed to a routine victory for the Czech star. But tennis is not played on paper. It is played on clay, on grass, on hard courts, by human beings with hearts, nerves, and dreams. Today, Alexandra Eala's heart, her nerve, and her dream were simply too big to be contained. She has sent a resounding message to every single player in the locker room. She is here, she is ready, and she fears absolutely no one. This is not just a win. It is a coronation of a new, dangerous force in women's tennis. Now, let's transition into the core of our analysis. Let us break down the walls of this magnificent victory and examine the bricks and mortar of Alexandra Eala's historic performance. How exactly does a rising star completely dismantle a 36-time champion? To truly understand the mechanics of this victory, we must look far beyond the final scoreline. We must look at the evolution of Alexandra Eala, the strategic vulnerabilities of Katerina Siniakova on this specific surface today, and the tactical masterclass that was executed on the Philippe Chatrier court. First, let us examine the profound evolution of Alexandra Eala's game. For years, those of us who follow the sport closely have known about her potential. We watched her lift the U.S. Open Junior Trophy. We watched her hone her craft at the Rafa Nadal Academy, absorbing the work ethic, the heavy topspin, and the tactical discipline that is a hallmark of that institution. But the transition from a junior champion to a main tour threat is notoriously perilous. It is a graveyard of unfulfilled potential. Many young players possess the weapons, but lack the mental fortitude, the physical stamina, or the tactical maturity to string together wins against seasoned professionals who fight for every single point as if their livelihood depends on it. What we witnessed today was a crystallization of Eala's potential into undeniable, world-class reality. Her forehand, long considered her primary weapon, was functioning at a level of terrifying efficiency today. But it was not just the raw power. It was the placement, the depth, and the spin. On the red clay of Roland Garros, a heavy, spinning forehand is the most destructive tool a player can possess. Eala was consistently finding the final 6 inches of the baseline, pinning Siniakova back and preventing the Czech champion from stepping in and dictating the play. Siniakova is at her best when she can use her opponent's pace, redirecting the ball and creating sharp angles. But when you are constantly retrieving balls from behind the baseline, forced onto your back foot, those angles disappear. Eala completely neutralized Siniakova's court positioning. She took the center of the court and refused to relinquish it. Furthermore, we must talk about Eala's movement. Clay court tennis is a dance. It requires sliding into shots, recovering your balance instantly, and having the sheer stamina to endure grueling 30-shot rallies. In the past, there might have been questions about Eala's physical endurance against the absolute elite grinders of the tour. Today, she answered those questions emphatically. She chased down drop shots that seemed destined to be winners. She defended the corners with a desperate, sliding athleticism that drew gasps from the crowd. More importantly, her transition from defense to offense was instantaneous. This is the hallmark of a champion. When Siniakova thought she had finally hit a shot good enough to win the point, Eala would not only retrieve it, but fire it back with interest, instantly turning the tables. This relentless pressure breaks a player's spirit. You could see the frustration mounting in Siniakova's body language. Every time she dug deep into her vast repertoire of tactical tricks, Eala was there, waiting, ready to strike. Let's dissect the strategic decisions made by the young Filipina. Coming into this match, the game plan against a player like Siniakova had to be built on aggressive patience. You cannot simply hit through Siniakova. She is too good a defender. You have to work the point, open up the court, and then, only when the opportunity presents itself, pull the trigger. Eala executed this perfectly. She engaged in the cross-court rallies, matching Siniakova's consistency, but she was always the one looking to inject pace down the line. Her backhand down the line, a notoriously difficult shot to master, especially on clay where the ball can kick unpredictably, was a revelation. Time and time again, Eala used it to abruptly end rallies that Siniakova was desperately trying to prolong. It was a shot of pure confidence, a shot that said, "I am not afraid to take risks in the biggest moments." Now, we must look at the other side of the net. What happened to Katerina Siniakova? How does a player with 36 titles, a player who knows how to win ugly, how to win gracefully, and how to win everything between, get so thoroughly outplayed? It would be deeply unfair and inaccurate to suggest that Siniakova simply played poorly. She is too great a champion for that. The truth is much more complex. Siniakova was simply not allowed to play her game. Eala's sheer pace and depth took away Siniakova's most precious commodity, time. When Siniakova is given time, she weaves a web of complex spins and angles that eventually traps her opponent. But Eala was hitting the ball so early, taking on the rise, that Siniakova was constantly rushed. Her legendary defensive skills were pushed past their breaking point. Moreover, there was a psychological element at play here. When you are the overwhelming favorite, the heavily decorated veteran facing a rising star, the pressure is entirely on your shoulders. You are expected to win. The longer the young underdog stays in the match, the more they believe, and the heavier the veteran's racket becomes. Eala did not just stay in the match. She led it from the front. She broke Siniakova's serve early, establishing a psychological foothold that she never let go. For Siniakova, looking across the net and seeing a player who was completely unbothered by her aura, unfazed by her resume, and perfectly willing to go toe-to-toe with her in the trenches, must have been incredibly disconcerting. Let's talk about the serve. In the modern women's game, the serve is paramount. Eala's serve has been a work in progress. But today, it was a weapon of mass destruction. It wasn't just the speed, though she was consistently hitting the high hundreds. It was a placement and a heavy kick on the second serve. On clay, a kick serve that jumps up above the shoulder is incredibly difficult to attack. Siniakova, normally a brilliant returner, struggled to find a rhythm. Eala was hitting her spots with pinpoint accuracy, slicing out wide on the deuce court to open up the court for her forehand, and jamming Siniakova with body serves on the ad court. By protecting her own serve so fiercely, Eala applied scoreboard pressure constantly. Siniakova knew that every service game of her own was a battle for survival, because breaking Eala seemed like an insurmountable task. The significance of this match extends far beyond the confines of this single tournament. For the Philippines, this is a monumental, historic moment. The country has a rich sporting heritage, but has been waiting, yearning, for a global superstar in tennis. Alexandra Eala is carrying the hopes and dreams of 100 million people on her shoulders, and today, she proved that she is more than capable of bearing that weight. The inspiration this victory will provide to young girls and boys picking up a racket in Manila, Cebu, or Davao is immeasurable. They now have tangible proof that a player from their nation can step onto the hallowed courts of Paris and systematically destroy the very best in the world. This win will spark a surge of interest and investment in Philippine tennis, potentially altering the sporting landscape of the nation for generations to come. For the WTA Tour, this result is a massive wake-up call. The hierarchy is shifting. The established veterans, the players who have dominated the last decade, are facing a fierce, fearless wave of new talent. Players like Eala are arriving on the tour not just with raw athletic ability, but with a deeply ingrained tactical understanding of the game. They have access to unprecedented analytics, elite coaching from a young age, and a sports science infrastructure that allows them to maximize their physical potential faster than ever before. Eala's performance today was a masterclass in modern tennis. Aggressive, athletic, mathematically precise, and mentally unbreakable. As we analyze the fallout of this explosion on the red clay, we must consider what the immediate future holds for Alexandra Eala. She has just painted a massive target on her back. She is no longer the underdog. She is the giant slayer. Every player she faces from this point forward in the tournament will bring their absolute best, knowing the level she is capable of producing. But based on what we saw today, Eala welcomes that challenge. She thrives in the fire, the composure she showed in closing out the match, a moment that has broken the nerves of countless seasoned professionals, was perhaps the most impressive aspect of her entire performance. Serving for the match against a 36-time champion, the arm can get heavy, the mind can wander, the weight of history can become crushing. But Eala stepped up to the line, went through a routine, and executed with the cold, clinical precision of an assassin. We must also take a moment to deeply analyze the specific conditions of today's match and how they played into this unbelievable result. The red clay of Paris is a living, breathing surface. It changes with the temperature, the humidity, the time of day. Today, the conditions were relatively heavy. The air was thick, and the clay was holding the ball slightly. Traditionally, this favors a player like Siniakova, who can use her heavy topspin and varied pace to grind down her opponent. However, Eala flipped this script entirely. She used the heavy conditions to hit through the court. Her flat, powerful strikes cut through the heavy air, forcing Siniakova constantly onto the defensive. Eala's ability to generate immense racket head speed allowed her to create her own pace, rather than relying on Siniakova to provide it. This is a critical distinction in high-level clay court tennis. If you rely on your opponent's pace on a slow court, you will eventually be outmaneuvered. Eala was the initiator, the aggressor, the undeniable architect of every single rally. Looking at the tactical geometry of the court, Eala's mastery was breathtaking. She recognized early on that engaging Siniakova in cross-court forehand-to-forehand rallies was a dangerous game, as Siniakova's angles are incredibly sharp. Instead, Eala consistently changed the direction of the ball, going down the line with her backhand to target Siniakova's forehand on the run. This is a highly demanding shot, requiring perfect footwork and timing, but Eala executed it flawlessly. By forcing Siniakova to hit forehands while moving laterally, Eala exposed a slight vulnerability in the Czech's movement, drawing uncharacteristic errors and short balls which she ruthlessly punished. It was a strategic masterstroke, brilliantly conceived and immaculately executed. Let's talk about the psychological warfare of a Grand Slam match. It is not just about who hits the better forehand. It is about who breaks first mentally. Siniakova is renowned for her competitive fire, her ability to dig deep and find solutions when backed into a corner. But today, every time Siniakova raised her level, Eala raised hers even higher. When Siniakova hit a spectacular passing shot, Eala responded with an unreturnable serve. When Siniakova finally managed to construct a brilliant point and secure a break point, Eala erased it with a fearless winner down the line. This relentless, unwavering response from the younger player is incredibly demoralizing. It sends a message. No matter what you do, no matter how well you play, I have an answer. That kind of psychological dominance is rare, especially against a champion of Siniakova's stature. The ripple effects of this victory will be felt far beyond the confines of this tournament. For Alexandra Eala, the sky is now the absolute limit. She has proven that her game translates to the biggest stages against the toughest opponents. She has shown that she possesses not just the physical tools, but the mental fortitude to be a major force in the sport. The tennis world will now watch her every move with bated breath. Can she maintain this level? Can she string together these kinds of performances day in and day out? If today is any indication, the answer is a resounding, terrifying yes. And what of Katerina Siniakova? It is a bitter pill to swallow, a shocking exit that she will surely dissect and analyze with her team. But true champions are defined not by their victories, but by how they respond to defeat. Siniakova will undoubtedly return to the practice court, refine her tactics, and come back stronger. But she, along with the rest of the tour, now knows that there is a new apex predator prowling the courts. The landscape of women's tennis has been irrevocably altered As we continue to process the sheer magnitude of this upset, it's crucial to recognize the broader context of international tennis development. The emergence of a player like Alexandra Eala from the Philippines represents a beautiful globalization of the sport. Tennis has historically been dominated by a select few nations with deep institutional support, massive federations, and long-standing traditions. While the Rafa Nadal Academy certainly provided a world-class finishing school for Eala, her roots, her initial drive, and the fierce national pride she carries originate far from traditional tennis strongholds. Her success is a testament to the fact that raw talent, coupled with an unwavering work ethic and the right opportunities, can shatter geographical and historical barriers. This victory is not just a personal triumph. It is a beacon of hope for developing tennis nations worldwide, proving that they too can produce champions capable of shaking the very foundations of establishment. Furthermore, we must delve into the specific mechanics of Eala's ground strokes, which prove so decisive today. Her ability to take the ball early, completely robbing Siniakova recovery time, was nothing short of revolutionary for a clay court match. Traditionally, clay court tennis involves deep positioning and heavy, looping shots. Eala, however, positioned herself aggressively close to the baseline, absorbing Siniakova's pace and redirecting it with terrifying accuracy. This aggressive positioning requires phenomenal hand-eye coordination and supreme confidence in one's technique, as a fraction of a second's hesitation results in an error. Today, Eala hesitated not once. She was a machine, calibrated to absolute perfection, dispensing winners with a cold, calculated efficiency that left the Parisian crowd in awe. Let us also consider the physical conditioning displayed by the young Filipina. To execute such an aggressive, high-risk game plan against a master defender like Siniakova requires immense physical stamina. Every explosive movement, every hard, sudden stop on the clay, every torquing rotation to generate pace takes a toll on the body. Yet, as the match wore on, Eala looked stronger, faster, and more dynamic. Siniakova, conversely, began to show the wear and tear of constantly chasing down Eala's blistering ground strokes. The physical battle was decisively won by the younger player, highlighting the elite level of fitness she has achieved. This physical superiority allowed her to maintain her mental clarity, executing her high-risk strategy without the creeping doubt that fatigue inevitably brings. The brilliance of this victory lies in its totality. Alexandra Eala outhit, outmoved, outthought, and outfought one of the most decorated champions in the sport. It was a comprehensive dismantling, a systemic breakdown of a legend. This was not a lucky win. It was a demonstration of absolute superiority on the day. The history books will record this as a massive upset, but for those of us who witnessed it, it felt like the natural emergence of a new superstar. As we slowly bring this unprecedented coverage to a close, we must reflect on the journey we have taken together over the last few hours. We started with shock, a collective gasp that echoed across the globe. We transitioned into a deep analytical dive, unpacking the complex tactical, physical, and psychological elements that culminated in this historic outcome. We have witnessed a passing of the torch, a moment where the established order was violently disrupted by the undeniable force of youth, talent, and sheer willpower. Alexandra Eala's victory over Katerina Siniakova is a story that will be told and retold for years to come. It is a story of a young girl from the Philippines who dared to dream big, who worked tirelessly to hone her craft, and who, when her moment finally arrived on the grandest stage of them all, did not shrink, but absolutely exploded into brilliance. The shock waves will eventually settle. The Parisian clay will be swept in water for the next match, but the memory of this performance will remain indelibly burned into the consciousness of the sporting world. We have seen the future of women's tennis, and her name is Alexandra Eala. The 36-time champion has been dethroned today, not by a stroke of luck, but by a tidal wave of spectacular tennis. To all the fans watching in the Philippines, savor this moment. Your champion has arrived, and she has announced her presence with a roar that has deafened the tennis establishment. To Katerina Siniakova, a legend of the game, a difficult day, but one that takes nothing away from a monumental career. But today belongs entirely to the youth, the courage, and explosive power of Alexandra Eala. Thank you for joining us for this historic deep dive. The French Open has delivered yet another unforgettable chapter, and we will be here to cover every single moment of the fallout. Until next time, keep watching, keep believing, and never underestimate the power of a rising star.